Hi there, and welcome to Intro to Goal Setting. I'll be your host today, Mike LaValle, and this is one of the continuing education series called Workshop Wednesday, where basically we get together and I'll talk about a topic that relates to architectural career. We've done things like SketchUp tutorials, resume and portfolio, and ARE, and they're just basically brief and informative sessions to help you evolve your architectural career. I really believe strongly that as architects and designers, we start learning and we never really stop, or we shouldn't stop, because there's just so much to learn and so much to understand. And there's a lot of skills that we can sort of help each other understand and foster and build into our careers. It's one of the reasons why I like doing these. So Workshop Wednesdays happen once a month, basically now. It's pretty much the last Wednesday of the month, and this has been brought to you by AAA Buffalo, Western New York Emerging Professionals. Also, a very dedicated committee that is trying to support emerging professionals and young architects and designers as they move through their careers, especially in the beginning. And I am from my blog, Evolving Architect, where I have my own sort of personal space to help people do the same, build their careers in the architectural profession through tutorials and blog posts and videos like this and all sorts of things. So I implore you to visit both the AIA Buffalo, Western New York webpage and also evolvingarchitect.com. So who am I? My name is Mike LaValle, and I'm a licensed architect and a lead AP, and I've been doing the workshops for a little over half a year now. This is the 7th or 8th that I've done, and I'm just very interested in helping others sort of get through their careers in any way they can. Like I said before, I really believe in skill building and learning and continuing education, and I'm here to help wherever I can. Sometimes a little bit more than other times. So I've basically gone over several things in the past that I thought would be very helpful, and today actually was one of the most requested things I've had in a while, which is goal setting. So, without further ado, let's get started. Now, just to kick us off here, you're in the right place if you want to establish goals that you can maintain and achieve. You're trying to understand the right way to balance your goals with your life, or you're just awesome and genuinely just want to better your career by achieving your goals. Any of these reasons, or even other reasons, are great purposeful reasons to be here. So thank you for watching this, and here we go. So, intro to goal setting. One of the things I like to do is talk through quotes, because I think that a lot of people have said these things better than I have. And one of the things that I really like, just to set this up, is ask yourself if what you're doing today is getting you closer to where you want to be tomorrow. And when I think of goals, I think of the things that will sort of bring us to not only the places we want to be, but the kinds of people that we want to be in the future. And I think having those sorts of goals are really important to the way that we go about getting there. You could have all sorts of dreams of doing certain things, but if you don't have the goals, in the first place, you could just start meandering around and lose your way. And I think that, this quote is really powerful to me, because it begs the question: are you just sort of stuck in whatever you're doing? Are you just sort of floating through your life? And is goal setting potentially a way that can get you out of that? So let's talk about goal setting 101. What is a goal really? So I think the very basic definition is a desired result or possible outcome that a person or system envisions, plans, and commits to achieve. Well, that's really sort of a very dictionary way of saying that a goal gives you a sense of direction. It allows you to sort of set your sights on something that you might otherwise pass up. And I think that's important because of that sense of direction that you get from planning a goal or setting up a goal. You can do a lot more because you have a certain focus and a certain determination in achieving that goal that you don't have otherwise. I think when a good goal is planned out well and you set the systems up for yourself that will really allow you to thrive and allow that goal to thrive with you, you can do almost anything. The problem is that a lot of us get sort of very overeager with our goals or underestimate the amount of effort that it might take to actually achieve that. I mean, if you just look at the screen right here, this person is on their journey and they're in the middle of the wilderness, but if you look into the horizon and see the distance, you have a plan of kind of how to get there, but you still have to make the effort to go there. So this isn't without a lot of effort on your part, but having the goal allows you to have the sort of direction and the momentum to sort of go on your way. Without the goal, you can just sort of get lost, and I think of the goal as sort of your compass, which is why I picked this image, because it allows you to move forward, and it allows you to find your way, basically. So here are some reasons for goal setting in the first place. I think we've already touched on a few, but the first one is to establish a fixed point for yourself. You want to have a location in your mind that you have to sense what it is that you want and be able to sort of imagine what that is. It gives you focus and purpose. Prevents time waste. It allows you to just get to the point and get there as quickly or as efficiently as you are sort of able to. Advance your career, life, etc. over time. I think the people that have very specific goals and the ones that execute on those goals are the ones that typically will move through their careers and their lives the fastest with I don't necessarily mean the fastest in terms of they're just letting everything go by, but they're getting to the points in their lives that they want to be at quicker. And I think most of our talk is going to relate to career, but you could apply any of what I'm going to talk about for the most part to your life or to personal matters or things like that. I think for the most part, I'm interested in helping you through your career and trying to understand how goal setting can help you in your in the ways that you better your professional life, but you could absolutely use this for any other facet of your life. It helps you determine your inspiration. I think one of the interesting things that happens when you goal set correctly is that you find out a little bit more about who you are and what you're made of, and it also gives you a good sense of what inspires you. I think one of the things we'll talk about in a little bit is what is your motivation and what is the thing that drives you. Is it just the goal, or is it the understanding that the goal will bring you something, or is it that you just want to be on the journey itself? And what kinds of goals are you making for yourself, and what are the things that inspire you? The results? Are they the the process itself. You know, is it tangible stuff? Is it intangible? Are you, interested in just bettering your short-term position at an office, or are you thinking longer term about what your overall career arc is going to be and whether or not you're going to open your own firm or do something that's going to really be a very big move? The goals can be any shape or size, but what is the thing that inspires you, and how much effort do you think that you want to put forth in order to get there? And this goes into a little bit more. Understand yourself better could be a reason for goal setting. Just trying to get to know who you are. I think a lot of people do a lot of soul searching, and goal setting could be a completely valid way of doing that. And to find peace with who you are, and find peace with who you are in your world. I think, especially for my own personal situation, I've come to understand that having certain goals allows me to sort of shut out what I don't have to deal with, and sort of focus on the things that I want to deal with. And it's a different mindset when you really know what you want and you focus on it really hard. You can find a sort of inner peace that what you're doing is right for you. So, that's all well and good, but there's a problem here. Most people try to plan at both big and small levels at the same time. Now, this doesn't mean that you shouldn't actually have layers to the goal planning that you have, maybe short-term or long-term planning in your goals. You're not necessarily going to be able to be the CEO of a Fortune 500 company overnight, but you need to have those long-term goals, and you need to have short-term goals like, passing a single exam, or trying to learn a new software program, or whatever it is. Having those small professional goals and the larger goals, or even smaller goals that are part of larger goals, are important. But I think the problem is that people get so overwhelmed by planning everything at once in a way that they think that they need they think that they need everything, and that they need to have goals all at the same time, that they overwhelm themselves, and they get sort of bogged down by what it is that they get bogged down and give up. And that leaves you sort of left with, okay, well, is my goal even worth it? Or is this the right thing for me? So, I asked myself the question, so what are we to do, right? I mean, how are we supposed to go about this? And I think there's a lot of stuff out there that you can sort of research on your own too. But what I found is that there's one sort of program that somebody came up with that I'd like to share with you right now. And it's called the SMART goals. Basically, what the SMART goals are, SMART is an acronym for basically each letter of SMART represents another kind of layer to what a goal should really be, in order for it to be a goal that you'll maintain and a goal that you will really go after. This was created by Robert S. Rubin. He's a professor at St. Louis University. And basically, we'll go through each one of these letters, and I'll talk about them a little bit more. And you'll start to see how each one of these relates to a positive way of goal setting. So, of course, let's start with us. Specific. I think the problem that a lot of people have is that their goals are not specific enough. They are either too vague, or they're too loose. Like, An example would be, I want to do better at my job. I mean, that's that's pretty much as vague as they come when it comes to professional goals. A more specific version of that might be, I want to earn an extra, you know, $2 an hour on top of my hourly rate by the end of this year. It's a very specific goal, and it comes with a lot of different things, but it's a very specific way of understanding what the issue is and what it is that you're going to try to achieve, rather than, I just want to do better at my job. Even if you have a reason, I want to do better at my job so that I'll get a raise. I mean, that's kind of like answering, I guess the best way to describe it is that mindset is kind of like answering a question that wasn't asked. You are trying to find a solution for a question that doesn't really exist. But if you know that you want to make more money, for example, at your job, then you can say, okay, well, how much money do I want to make? That's a very specific way of thinking about it. And when do I want to make that by? Well, by the end of the year. That's a very specific way of understanding it. So another letter in SMART, of course, is M for measurable. The other thing that people don't really do when they start creating goals is they don't have any way of measuring what it is that they're actually, trying to do here. They're very lofty goals, like in maybe academic circles, it's more like, I want to write a book. Well, it is measurable in some ways, but it's, how long is the book? Is the book going to be a 1,000-page textbook? Is it going to be a 20-page pamphlet? Is it going to be, I think this sort of goes in a little bit with specificity, but it's a little bit different in the fact that you can basically, after a certain amount of time or after a certain amount of effort, you can say, okay, I did this or I didn't. If it's not measurable, for example, I just want to do better at my job, that's not really measurable, because yes, technically you might be doing better at your job after a certain amount of time or after a certain amount of things that you've done, but it's not measurable in a very direct and sort of calculable way. It just isn't. So the more specific and the more measurable, the better. A is for achievable. Now, again, going back to the Fortune 500 CEO example earlier, you don't want to make something that, there's sort of an old saying that you can do anything you want to do. And that's true to a degree. However, for our purposes and for the way that you think about goals, I really recommend that you think about your goals in a way that is very achievable. And that doesn't mean that they have to be silly or things that are just so simple that, you could just do them overnight and then your goals are done. What I mean is that they have to be something that is, that you could possibly do. For example, if you have a heart condition, you're probably not going to climb Mount Everest. If you're, 4 foot tall, you're probably not going to be an NBA All-Star. If you are, let's think about this in terms of skills even. If you are, let's say, a designer or an architect, you're not necessarily going to be able to design and build absolutely whatever you want to or wherever you want to without any restrictions ever. You're not going to be able to um, I guess just sort of do whatever you want without having some sort of basis of how you're going to get there. So if it's achievable by either a certain skill set that you have that you can implement towards that goal, or something like that that makes it achievable, that's another thing. Like the person I think of all the time with this is Gary Vaynerchuk. He's an entrepreneur. He's a go-getter. He's all about the hustle. He's kind of coined the market, or coined the term and cornered the market on that. He's all about effort 24/7, 150% all the time, and he has one goal, and it's to own the New York Jets. Now, the New York Jets cost billions and billions of dollars, and there are lots of different reasons why you can't just go and buy the New York Jets. For example, somebody already owns the New York Jets, and a lot of these sports teams don't just sort of disappear. You, in terms of their ownership, so you have to build that over time, and he's basically committed to the fact that that's what he wants in his life, and he knows that it's a 30-40 year thing, but that he has the skill set as an entrepreneur, and he has already proven himself time and time again that he could potentially do that. It is really, really difficult, and I don't think that most of us could necessarily do that, but his skill set allows him to do that, and he has the patience to be able to do that. That's still achievable because even though he's not born with the amount of money or the influence that it would take to get that outright, he can build that into his life story and eventually have a very good chance of doing that. So R, relevant. Here's another one. Don't make goals that are very sort of lofty and don't necessarily make sense for you. For example, if you really want to become an architect, don't, and this, I don't know if you would ever really do this, but if you want to become a licensed architect or a registered architect, you wouldn't start studying for like a nursing exam or a medical exam. You would, or try to pass the bar. You would try to pass the AREs because it's relevant to your profession or your self. If you are trying to, if you're trying to do something that will improve your skill set, you don't want your goal necessarily to be to just sort of learn any skill like crocheting. You want the goal to be able to learn a skill like SketchUp or Revit or hand drawing or construction documents or code reviews or any number of things that an architect would want to know that are very relevant to whatever that goal is for your career. So keep it relevant, and that's another way to make your goals smart. And the final thing is time bound. You have to have sort of an end cap, not necessarily to your entire goal, but to a time when you'll sit back and be able to measure it again. So when you're thinking about the goals and you're thinking about how you're going to sort of get them done, what are the sort of time constraints that you're putting on yourself so that you'll actually be able to achieve your goals in a very timely manner. I think a lot of times I've actually been very, let's say I've had issues myself with making these very sort of what I thought were time-bound goals that ended up getting away from me, and then I realize a year has passed and I didn't do anything about them, or life just happens and there's no way of structuring around that. You just have to sort of roll with the punches. But at some point you need to be able to look back and say, did I do this? Did I not do this? What is my time constraint to be able to review this and come back to it so that I understand what my next step is, whether I need to pivot or start over or whatever. So that's what a SMART goal is. It's specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. And, I think that really leads into motivation for me. When you consider the fact that think about this for a second. So every December or January, most of the world, or let's just say America for right now, thinks about how they've just been wining and dining and partying and seeing family and going to festivities and parties and dinners with family and things like that, and eating cookies and sweets and drinking and all sorts of stuff. Your motivation at that moment is probably really good if you haven't been at the gym lately to go and get healthy in the new year. It's something that almost everybody, I don't want to generalize too much, but it's something that a lot of people really think is a great goal to have. And it is, to be healthy and to get fit and things like that. But your motivation can also wane over time, and the reasons why you wanted to lose weight or get healthy in the first place sort of start to disappear because you get farther away from the things that motivated you in the first place. And motivation is a critical point in keeping your goals on track. So going back to Gary Vaynerchuk, I really love this quote. Somebody asked him on the street, hey Gary, and I'm paraphrasing here, but hey Gary, and this is just because they recognize him because he's a minor celebrity in the entrepreneurial sect, but they said, hey Gary, give me 3 words that'll be really motivational and that will help me achieve whatever I want to. And he just said, you're going to die. And I just, and they both kind of said to each other, do something about it. And he's like, yeah. And the thing that I love about that is it was off the cuff, and he just said it, and it was so natural that when you think about it, nobody has unlimited amounts of time. We all have to choose wisely what we're going to fill our time with, and what kinds of activities we're going to do, and what kinds of different sorts of goals we're going to try to achieve over our entire lifetime. And without getting really bogged down by it, not everybody has to have the I'm going to own the New York Jets sort of motto like Gary Vaynerchuk does. And I don't think that's necessarily healthy for everybody. But the fact that he just recognizes that there's only a certain amount of time is extremely powerful, because it's a motivating factor for him. And I think it's a motivating factor for a lot of people that, time is precious. I think we take time for granted and take it, we undervalue sort of what time is for our lives. And having that kind of motivation is a stronger motivation than, I had too much turkey over Thanksgiving and too many cookies and drinks around Christmas, so I'm going to go get healthy now. It could be a really good motivator for you depending on who you are, but that's the difference, I think, in terms of the motivation. So one of the things that I'd say that is a really good motivator, especially once we sort of talk about how to figure out what your goal is just to keep it sort of in front of you, keep it where you're going to see it. I think everybody uses their phone for almost everything that they do now. So keep, one of the things I did when I was taking my architect's registration exam was I kept this image on my phone, and it was a reminder that I was going to get through this. And I remember it because it had basically 3 architects on it that I really respect their work, and as an inspiration to what I would become after I past the AREs. And that didn't mean that I was going to become one of these sort of, very highly regarded architects, but that I was going to become an architect and that I was going to be sort of able to, you know, be included in that sort of, let's call it, membership of the profession. Once you get your license, you're an architect. So I had that, and then I had another portion of that that was dedicated to what I was going to basically give myself or to myself after I was done, which was a PlayStation 4, which I eventually did get, which was awesome. And the other thing, well, the reason I say that too is because I really like video games. So the thing that I loved about that was that it was sort of a sense of freedom. Like, after I get through all this studying and after I get through all that, it will be the thing that I can get back to. I can have that freedom again and do what I want. But right now I can't deal with that. And then the bottom third of it was the laptop that I'm actually recording this on now, which is crazy to me. It was just a picture of a MacBook, and I've wanted a MacBook forever. And one of the things I did for myself, it wasn't right away, but eventually I got a laptop after I got my license, and it was just awesome because it sort of represents the achievement that I've had, by getting my license and becoming an architect for myself. And having that sort of motivation doesn't have to be physical. It can be sort of just a reminder to help keep you motivated, something that will really draw your attention. But having that in a lot of places can really be helpful because it allows you to keep going, which gets me to overwhelm. I think it's very easy to get really overwhelmed by how daunting a goal could be, or how you're falling behind in a goal, or maybe you thought you were on track, but then you find out the next day that you're not going to be able to achieve the goal for whatever reason. And the thing I think of is this quote: if the plan doesn't work, change the plan, but never the goal. You can always, like I said earlier, if life happens, you can change the plan. But if you keep the goal, you'll still eventually get to the goal. You just have to keep going. The plan is more of the path of how to get to the goal being sort of the end line or the finish line. And I think that that's an important distinction because you want to, again, keep yourself motivated and not get overwhelmed so that you just don't give up completely. So here are a couple ways to prevent overwhelm, I think. Don't overextend yourself. We're going to talk about how to sort of come up with your own goal, but don't make too many goals. Don't make too many that are really all-consuming, or they're going to be too daunting. Like, don't give yourself something crazy like, I'm going to write a book in the next 3 months, and it's going to be a New York Times bestseller. Or I'm going to be the principal at my firm because, if I just do these couple things, I'll be partner of the firm in 6 months. I mean, that's a lot of weight on your shoulders, and I don't think that that's really, it's not a realistic time frame either for any of that stuff. Not that you can't have those goals, just that maybe the time portion could be something that, overwhelms you, or the amount of things that you give. You could be just 20 different goals, and you can't really focus on all of them at the same time. So putting all that weight and all that pressure on yourself is not healthy. Establish benchmarks. Figure out ways to really, or milestones, figure out ways to really monitor and understand what it is that you are doing, and the sort of, I guess, what are if you had to sort of map out your journey along the path to your goal, and think of it more like I don't know, like a cross-country tour. There's going to be things along the way, cities that you have to visit or pass through, or towns. What are those milestones, or those places where you rest and you say, okay, well, I'm almost there, but I've done at least this much of my travel. Here's how much I have to go. what are those benchmarks that are going to keep you motivated? Don't beat yourself up. Like the quote said before, you can't um, you can't just sort of give in to little failures or even big failures. Honestly, if the plan doesn't work, then change the plan. You know, you can't control everything, and I know that from experience that it's tough to give up that sort of control, but you just kind of have to in order to keep moving and just keep it going, because otherwise you're going to drive yourself crazy, get overwhelmed, and lose the goal altogether. Learn to love the process and not the result. I really love this because I think that it speaks a lot to how your mindset should be when you're making goals and you're trying to actually execute on them. You can't just be thinking necessarily about the end result, because especially with a lot of the goals that you're going to come up with, you're not going to be able to maintain just based on the idea of the final thing. I mean, you have to kind of learn to love how you're getting to that goal as well. And maybe not learn to love the process with absolutely everything about it, but learn to love what you're becoming out of the process, what you are achieving as you go. Pat yourself on the back every now and then for doing a good job, or for moving the needle forward, or for getting to the next rung of the ladder. Just keep yourself motivated in a way that is sort of cyclical and will regenerate your motivation. I think another big thing to consider here is don't go alone. When you come up with your goals, tell somebody about it. Share that information with other people around you, with your friends or family or spouse, or significant other. Don't just think that your goals have to be only your own. You want that support system there. You want people to be cheering you on and kind of walking the path with you. And I think that's important, because the more that you can sort of include other people in what your goals are, the more they'll either understand when you have to just dedicate yourself to those, or when you achieve something, they'll understand what it means because it's important to you and you've told them about it. And the only thing I would caution is, don't make goals about other people. Make goals about yourself first and foremost, because especially, when I think about professional goals, because the goals that you have professionally in your career are really for you in the first place. And I think that while the benefits and the indirect consequences, or sort of positive reactions that could come out of achieving your goals, could affect other people or help other people, if they're not truly your goals, then you're kind of doing that thing that we were talking about earlier, which is wasting time a little bit, because you're not doing the things that you should be doing in your life. You're doing things that other people think you should, or etc. I mean, that might be a little bit cheesy, but I really believe in that too, is you have to be doing these things for yourself and understanding kind of why it is that you're doing them, so that when you finish the goals, you've achieved a very deep sense of personal gratification from it that nobody can take away from you, because you did it yourself and you did it for yourself. So I think the next thing to really talk about is how to make a goal. I mean, I think we've talked a lot about why you would have a goal and what that means, but what I've come up with are sort of 5 different phases of goal setting, and we're going to go through each of them, and we're going to talk a little bit about each one. And when you get to each step, I want you to potentially pause the video entirely and don't go to the next section until you've sort of done that little exercise that's there. I think it's going to really be helpful, because you shouldn't necessarily skip all the way to step 5 or phase 5, because you might lose some of the benefits of the other stages. So either pause as you go through each one, or at least watch the whole thing first and then go back, because I think this is really beneficial if you sort of do these things in order as they're sort of projected. Or at least I've done it this way, and I feel like it's helped me out a lot. So, phases of goal setting. First is the maybe this could have been worded a little bit differently, or a little nicer. Brain dump or brainstorming, and that's really where we're going to come up with the ideas. It's almost like a free flow of ideas. It's a stream of consciousness is the thing I'm thinking of, and it could be anything and everything, and all of the in-betweens of that spectrum. You want to make sure that you get everything sort of out of your head and down onto paper, and don't leave any corner unturned. Make sure that anything that you want to do or you think you need to do is sort of written down and in front of you, and it's sort of out of your head. It's just on the paper now, and it becomes more real. Bargaining, or the bargain phase, is it gets a little bit into the idea that you need to sort of give yourself space from other things, and how do you do that with yourself to make room for your goals. Refinement has a lot more to do with sort of kind of what the word suggests. It means that you need to sort of take those ideas from the first round and sort of nail down the ones that seem to work a little bit better for you, so that you can keep going, and you're not going to necessarily, maybe there's some other ideas that are on the page in the original step that you still want to deal with, but these aren't necessarily the ones that you want to deal with right now. So in the refinement stage, we're going to take more and sort of extract those and focus in on those few. Selection has to do with pretty much choosing the goals that you sort of, you're taking the 5 or so goals that you've kind of refined, that you've sort of understood a little bit better, and you're really trying to pare them down into the ones that mean the absolute most to you, the ones that are the absolute perfect goals for you. It's where you'll kind of try to understand why you're looking at each one, and you're going to try to find balance, between them as well. And the confirmation is really just the last step that we'll take, so that you can sort of, you feel good about what you're planning. You have a set goal or a set series of goals, and you know what they're all about. You've come to terms with the sort of level of effort that each one will take, and you know how much effort they're going to take with each other. I think that if you have a couple goals for a certain given period of time, having a nice variety, so that you're not doing very heavy goals at the same time as other heavy goals, or maybe too many of the little goals all sort of plopped up on top of each other. If you having a couple really huge goals are just as bad as having like 100 little goals. It's not necessarily efficient, and it's not really what this process is about. I think the goal setting that we're trying to do here is a little bit more in terms of profound change, that once you achieve those goals, you can go on and do any other number of goals. But we're looking at sort of focused goal making here that will allow you to achieve the next level of whatever your career is, or maybe even a couple levels up of what you want your career to be. So the first step, or the first phase, is the brain dump phase. And you can see this nice skeleton right here. So the brain dump is really the time where I want you to take 10 to 15 minutes and write down all the things you want for yourself in your career. I know that sounds like a lot to ask, but when you think about it, here's some examples. Maybe you want to own your own firm one day. You want to become a licensed architect. If you're already a licensed architect, you want to maybe get into a very specific kind of program for architecture, like you want to design houses or design K through 12 projects or skyscrapers, or maybe you just want to be able to design with a team that you really care about, and that's sort of your goal, is to find a place where you belong. Or maybe your goal is something very straightforward. These are sort of all the little things that you might be thinking of. Maybe you want to enter a design competition or help out at a community center by getting involved with some sort of local organization. Maybe you want to network with a lot of professionals in the field, like becoming a member of the AIA, for example. And these are the things. I don't want you to limit yourself at all. Disregard importance. Just write everything you can think of down on a piece of paper and see what happens. You're going to come up with a whole bunch of different things. And I think the thing to consider here is that you might end up with something like, I want to learn more about X. Insert whatever you want to think here. It could be about a type of construction. It could be about licensure. It could be about software. It could be about anything. I just want to learn more about this. And that's just an example. I mean, you could have 100 different ideas of what you want to do or what you're thinking about, but I just want to learn more about this thing is the example we're going to run with. You'll see how that gets adapted as we go through the phases. So the next step is the bargain. And the bargain is, in some ways, it's kind of my favorite step, because it really gets down to it's the thing that I feel the most gratified after I've done it, because I list all the things that sort of are obstacles in my way, and I just think about what I can kind of give up in order to actually achieve my goals. And it's, sometimes I think of it as being a little bit maybe what's the thing I'm thinking of? I guess the way I describe it is it seems like the phase that you would hate the most, but in a lot of ways it gives me a lot of satisfaction after I've been able to come up with the solutions, because it is probably the most challenging of the phases. So when you think about it, what do we need more of? I mean, what is it that everybody needs more of? We've talked about it a little bit here and there over the course of the last half hour or so, but what do we need more of? The answer I think most people would consider is time. You might have said money, you might have said something else, but I think in a lot of ways time can be the solution for all those other things. If you have enough time, you can do almost anything. And how do we get more time? I mean, it's not like we can just turn the hourglass and just get a whole bunch more time, right? Well, we remove other things from our lives. And this is what I meant before, is like, you might have to make sacrifices here, and you probably will have to make sacrifices here in order to achieve your goals and your dreams. And this part might seem like it's really going to suck, but it's actually very rewarding if you can do it sort of with an open mind. So now that you have a bunch of ideas, ask yourself 2 questions. What will I say no to? And this is more like, what will I say no to, for example, this coming year, or this next 6 months, or this next 3 months? It's the given amount of time that you're already sort of thinking about in your head for how long you want to commit to these goals. What will I say yes to? Now, these are extremely important because they will define sort of not only what you're giving up, but how much you're willing to give up. And this is a very telling sort of series of answers that you will end up with, because the more that you can list with what will I say no to, the more likely you are to achieve your goals, because we're all probably very busy people. I know I'm really busy, and it's hard for me to say no sometimes. And I just want to help people and say yes all the time, but I can't because I won't be able to achieve my goals. So, what will you say no to? What will you say yes to? And I think at the end, you might end up with something like, I almost don't want to say this, but I will stop watching Game of Thrones. No, no. I love certain shows that I watch, like Game of Thrones, or I used to watch Mad Men, or actually my guilty pleasure right now is actually House of Cards. I think I missed the boat with most of the other people that have been watching it, but I just started watching it recently and I love it. Um, you know, that could be your thing. I will stop watching this thing, or I will stop playing video games, or I will stop um, participating in this thing that I do as a hobby or whatever. Things that probably you could just cut out, and even though you would miss them to some degree, you wouldn't really miss them. I mean, there a lot of things that we do, I think, as people are just time filler anyway. So you might not miss them as much as you think you would. So that's kind of what you might end up with. Now, keeping in mind that you still have the original group of things that you listed in the beginning, we go to refinement. And this is sort of where we're going to take things through the SMART format. Now, just to remind you, SMART goals are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. So they're going to have a very specific reason why we're doing things, or the actual goal itself will be very specific. It's going to be measurable so that we can actually calculate how well we're doing. It's achievable. It's within the realm of possibility that we can do this. It's relevant to both sort of the time in our lives and the kinds of aspirations that we have. So, something that might be relevant for somebody in their early side of their career might be becoming licensed. But if you're already licensed, it's not really as relevant anymore because you already did it. So maybe the relevancy for you is to become the partner at a firm. As examples, time bound. What is the time period that you're giving yourself to achieve all this stuff? What does it mean for you, etc.? So now, just as a refresher for the SMART goals, take several of your ideas you feel strongest about and fit them within the SMART format. Try to go through and measure, you could do this on like a 5-point scale or a 10-point scale or some other way of measuring this, but literally take the goals that you have and just sort of, maybe you could even do this a little bit abstractly, like just have a gut sense of how much these each relate to the 5 pieces of the SMART formatting. Dig deeper and determine a goal that could work with that initial idea. A lot of the things that you came up with in the first step are most likely just ideas and not necessarily goals, but they're things that you want to achieve, or they're types of things that you'd like to do, but they're not necessarily goals. And I think as you sort of filter everything through the SMART format, you'll be able to sort of see clearer what those goals could manifest themselves as. So, for example, you may end up with something like, now, I don't know if you remember what the original phase thing is that you might end up with, but it was about learning something, right? So it could be a little bit more specific, and I want to read more books about that thing, or in this case, X. Very mysterious. So, that's a very specific way to learn more about something. Maybe you like to read a lot, and that's a very clear a clear way to understand through the smart format what you're doing. And it's not completely there yet, but it looks a little bit clearer. It's like having a very out of focus photo, and your goal is sort of revealed as you change the change the lens and either magnify it or adjust it so that you can see the clearer picture, right? So selection. This is a little bit, we're getting towards the end of the process, and this is where you're going to pick the top 5 to 10 best ideas and refine them even farther. And really what this means is that you're going to end up with something that's like, I want to read 12 books about something or X over the next 12 months. And it's a little bit like the last phase, the refinement, but it's more about, you could have had 20 ideas that you took through the smart filter, and this is you choosing the 5. Probably is a good number, maybe even a few less, depending on what these are. They could be up to 10. I wouldn't go more than 10, but you could. If I said I wanted to read 12 books about this topic about over the next 12 months, that means I'm averaging about 1 book a month. And if for whatever reason I fall behind, I can kind of catch up and read some more, and it'll be okay. But that at the end of the 12 months, you can sort of look at everything and understand, okay, well, I got to the end of the 12 months. Did I read 12 books? Because if I did, then I probably know a lot more about this thing that I just have labeled X. And it could be about anything. It could be about a new software. It could be about business. It could be about architecture in general. It could be about an architect specifically. It could be about a type of program, or, it could be about anything. Keeping it relevant, keeping it to the something that relates to your career. Confirmation. So we're at the very end of this whole process, and now what we have to do in the last step is take what you have and compare each goal as like a singular item to all the other goals. So you should have somewhere between like 3 and maybe up to 10 goals at this point. And what you need to do is you need to make sure that the goals you have fit your long-term and short-term plan and work with your sort of why you're doing these things in the first place. So this is what I mean by planning the long-term and the short-term goals together. You might have that sort of equivalent sort of Gary Vaynerchuk goal of, I want to own the New York Jets, right? Like, I want to have a 50-person firm or 200-person firm in New York City. Well, that's a pretty lofty goal there. It's, especially if you're starting from scratch. I mean, you can't, or maybe even go even bigger than that. I want to win the Pritzker Prize. I think that on some level, that is sort of a very audacious kind of goal to have. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, the Pritzker Prize is sort of like the Lifetime Achievement Award for architects that has been given to a lot of notable architects over time. And they only give out 1 a year, and it has to be to a living architect. So you have to do it. You have to build enough and prove yourself enough in construction and design and things like that you are worthy of this award. And it's a very prestigious thing, and that could be a goal for you for your life or for whatever. mixing those with the short-term plans of, I want to have a better job where I can use Revit and learn more about construction. That's a short-term plan. That's a maybe you want to change jobs in the near future and you need to get there by improving your software skills or creating a portfolio or creating a resume or networking with people. Steps along the way to get you on that short-term plan that could also still be part of your long-term plan. The problem is that we start just thinking about the very big picture things sometimes and try to do every little step in between, or we start doing all the little stuff and don't have any idea where we're going or why. So through this, I hope that you will sort of understand your why a little bit more and get a sense of what you're doing this for. And, that should sort of come out of this process. You should understand your why a little bit more. So you might end up with something at the end like, I will read 12 books in 12 months because I want to learn more about X and become an authority on the subject. It fulfills all of the different things that we've been talking about, and it's very specific and it's measurable. So let's go back through the SMART. It's specific. It's a very clear task. It's measurable because of how clear we've been about what we're doing. It's achievable. It's absolutely achievable. It is relevant because it's part of what you want to do. You want to become an authority on the subject. And let's say you want to learn more about houses and become an authority on the subject. Well, then you're going to be really good at either designing or understanding construction about houses, potentially. And the last one is time-based. It's obviously time-based because I've, written here in 12 months. So you can get a sense that your milestones will be about every month or every other month or 3 months or 6 months. It doesn't matter, but you can get a very clear sense in the one statement about what this is that you're doing, how you're doing it, and why you're doing it. And the why is really important because it reinforces your motivation, like we were talking about before. If you understand the reason why you're doing something and the reason behind everything, you're going to be way more invested in it than if you just said, I'm going to just do this thing. So, huzzah! You have a goal. I mean, it's great to have a goal. So, congratulations. If you've gotten this far, you have at least a goal. Yay! All right. So, just real briefly, I want to talk about the sort of the do's and don'ts of goal setting and sort of wrap it up here. So, the do's of goal setting. Plan at multiple levels. Now, when I say this, I don't mean doing it at the same time. I just mean being aware of what different kinds of goals will get you and the commitments that you need to make for each. Don't make very lofty goals and then just picking away loosey-goosey at all the different steps in between and then have a million different little other goals at the same time. Like, really plan out at multiple levels. Have maybe one long-term goal, maybe a medium-term goal, and a short-term goal, and do it that way so that you always have sort of a way to frame how you're doing things or what you're doing next or how you're going about stuff. Then you can kind of see your goals change over time or readjust or whatever you need to, but plan at multiple levels. Keep the goals simple. As you saw in the final goal that we ended up with, it was fairly straightforward. I mean, I could tell somebody what that goal was and I could explain it to them in a way that made sense. It's a very straightforward, simple goal. Now, it might not be a simple path to get to that goal, or to get to the end of that goal, but it might be, as long as you can clearly sort of describe that to somebody else in a way that is reinforced by the SMART kind of goal method, I think you'll be okay. Reward yourself. You need to reward yourself. You need to, either at milestones or at the end of the goal, you need to do something for yourself that will sort of be the carrot at the end of the stick. I mean, it's silly to think of it that way, but any motivation that you can give yourself that is true motivation will be helpful and will allow you to keep moving forward. Be realistic. Don't, just have goals that don't necessarily make any sense, or that don't, for you, I mean, don't make any goals that don't make any sense for yourself, and don't make a lot of goals. Don't make anything that's going to overwhelm you. As soon as you get into the overwhelm stage, you just kind of flounder and the goal might disappear altogether. Diversify your goals. Maybe have one of your goals be a personal goal, have one of your goals be a professional goal, and have one of your goals be somewhere in between, or one or the other. If you don't have all of your goals in just one bucket, but they're in different places, you're more likely to achieve those goals, altogether, because you're not putting all of your attention into one type of activity or one type of goal. So it could help. And understand your why, I think, is a really important thing too, when you consider the do's of goal setting. The why will lead you to the sort of positive reinforcement that you need. So when you get really down in the dumps and you can't remember why you're doing something, understand why you're doing it. Well, let me back up. When you can't understand what you're doing, understand why you're doing it, because there has to be a strong reason, a strong catalyst that made you do that in the first place. And as soon as you understand that, it will get a lot easier to motivate yourself to keep moving. The don'ts of goal setting. So don't make your goals for someone else. I already mentioned that. You got to do this for yourself. First and foremost, the results can be for everybody. It can be for your family, your friends, yourself, everyone. But you have to do this for yourself, because these kinds of goals are for your personal growth. Don't try to do too much. You'll overwhelm yourself and burn out. Don't select goals that are too easy either, because if you're too easy, then you'll either rush right through them and just say, oh yeah, I achieved my goals, and then you'll feel very unfulfilled because they're not really that substantial enough to merit kind of a personal growth that you might be looking for. Don't force goals into your life. I think putting pressure on your goals a little bit just to keep you active and keep you engaged is good, but don't force everything into your life. Don't push everything away just to make total and complete room for these goals necessarily. You have to find sort of the harmony or the balance between your goals and what you're already doing. Don't be impatient. I mean, the Gary Vaynerchuk example is a perfect way of thinking about it. He is going to spend the better part of his life trying to buy the New York Jets, and you can't do that if you're impatient. You will just burn out, give up, and never own the New York Jets. And if you're Gary Vaynerchuk, that's just not the way you roll. So being impatient is a funny thing too, because I've done a lot of things where, because I was a little bit more patient than maybe other people who have tried things, I've been able to achieve certain things in my life. And I feel like it's a very important character trait to, if you don't have it very much and you are an impatient person, try to foster that a little bit more and try to be more patient and try to work on that, because it's a character trait that is not only respected, but it's also something that will bring you far. Don't establish goals because they're cool. Just because everybody knows about VR, for example, or is learning about VR or 3D printing, doesn't mean that you need to be the 3D printing wizard. If it's not something you're interested in and you have no idea why you would ever use that technology, then don't commit yourself to that if it's just a fad. I'm not saying that is a fad, but just you need to make the goals because they're something that is part of you that you want to advance yourself with, and something that will basically keep you moving in your career in a way that you want to direct your career. So don't just do something because it's the cool thing. So backing up, just a quick overview. Keep moving. I think as soon as you stop, you are very likely to stop altogether. I remember when I was taking my AREs, going back to that as an example, that I stopped. I did a lot, and I took the first 5 exams. This is when it was 7 exams. Took the first 5 exams in basically a 6-month period, and then I stopped for almost a year because of things that were going on in my life and things like that. But I could have started at any other point or at some point in between, but I didn't keep up with it, and then something else caught my eye, and then something else caught my eye, and then before you know it, you're kind of not moving, and it's harder to bring up that momentum. As long as you keep the momentum, even if it's a little bit at a time, you'll be successful. Just get out there and just start doing it. Start planning and start thinking about how you're going to achieve these goals. You're never going to achieve any of these goals if you don't start trying. I mean, you have to make the effort and start planning and start figuring out what you want your goals to be. And just as long as you sort of show up, that's half the battle. Focus on the goal. Think of it as the only thing that is, in front of you whenever you are directed towards it. There will be other things in your life that you'll have to attend to, but if you maintain focus on the goal, you will achieve it at some point because it is something that you are motivated by, that you can see, and as long as you keep fixating on it and thinking about it and understanding what it means to you, it's something that can potentially motivate you just by knowing about it, just by thinking about it. And again, loving the journey and understanding that part of the satisfaction will come from just the process. Celebrate your achievements. I can't stress this enough. You need to have milestones or places in between, especially if they're very long-term goals, to say, hey, yeah, I did this thing and it was important to me and I deserve to party about it, and celebrate what I've done. It's a way to sort of give yourself a little bit of a break, give yourself a little bit of relief, and just say, hey, I really did this thing. It's great. And that'll help motivate you to do it again or to do more things or fulfill the ultimate goal that you have. So I'd say that, I really like this quote, and I think it's a good quote to end on. What you get by achieving your goals is not as important as what you become by achieving your goals. And that's a very important distinction because I think we've talked a lot about the process, and understanding sort of who you're going to be after this process is just as important, if not more important, than what you've actually achieved, because you have that experience by going through the goal, and you've achieved the goal because you've experienced that, and you are a different person on the other end of the journey. And respecting that journey and respecting who you've become is sort of I think sort of the ultimate prize in goal setting in the first place. So this is not a live version like it normally is, but what I'd ask you to do is please ask questions in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. If you have any thoughts about either the process that I've talked about or the ways that you've gone about your own goals, like what is your goal? What is a goal that you have right now? I'd love to hear about it. And I really appreciate you coming here. Thanks for being awesome. And thanks if you've gotten to this point. You're I'll hear about an hour and 14 minutes in. I just really thank you for sort of sticking with it, because this was a really good. I really enjoyed this workshop. So I hope you got a lot out of it. And for more professional insight to help you evolve your architectural career, please visit Evolving Architect. That's evolvingarchitect.com. And if you want to look at find me on social media, you can either find me on Twitter at Archivalley, ARCHIVALLEY, or pretty much just search Evolving Architect for most things and you'll find it. There's a Facebook page and a Facebook group. And if you want to hear more from me directly, I have a weekly newsletter that I send out every Sunday morning, and it's called the Evolution Weekly. And basically, what I do is I send out either a story or a tip or some sort of motivational thing to help you achieve, level up, achieve your goals and level up your career in however you want to. So thank you again so much for your time. And again, this was brought to you by AA Buffalo, Western New York, Emerging Professionals, and Evolving Architect. This was Intro to Goal Setting. I am Michael LaValle. Good evening. Thank you for being awesome.